So CCNA is one of the valuable certificate. I mean, it's been there for years, and Cisco is providing the certification for for last 20 years. And now, getting as a fresher, you should have some hands-on experience and have to have a basic understanding about how network works and what is the modern network is about, what is the upcoming technology. So Cisco is very valuable, and everybody they prefer. When you go for an interview, definitely your resume will add a weightage if you have a CCNA certification. So that's the, primary certificate that every company expects a candidate should have. So let me start today with the different types of memory that's available in the router. But before that, I'll give a basic overview. Since last time, I feel like, so many freshers, they do not have much experience in networking, so they don't know what is router and switches and all that. So I'll give an abstract of what is router and switches, and I'll start with that in deep. Let me start my whiteboard. So we discussed last time, right? I mean, I hope everybody, they have some basic understanding about what is network, what is WAN connection, what is internet, and all that. But from the enterprise standpoint, I'll show the diagram, but before that, I'll give an overview, the physical design, how it looks. So in every enterprise, say for example, there are multiple users. They're sitting here, right? They got their PC. And for everyone to access the internet, they need a primary device that's a router. That they call it as an head-end device. And we all know that we have cabins and many floors, and the users are sitting and they connected to the cabins with the LAN port. So everybody is aware of this is all a LAN ports. So all this LAN port that actually goes to a server room where you got the switch. So from a physical topology, I would show you something like this. You got a switch, and this is a router. This is connected to the server room, and they call this as a patch panel. So from this patch panel, the cable will be running to every desk, and the users get connected to it, right? And this router have two connections. One is a LAN connection that goes to the switch, and other connection, this goes to the internet. This is a very basic high-level overview of how exactly the users are connected from the corporate perspective. Now let me show you the topology. For more practical understanding, I'll show you this. So this is the exact topology. I mean, I'm trying to make it very simple here with just two PCs connected. And here, this is one device. This works as a router switches. But as I told you, in the enterprise, we have an individual device where we got a switch that's connected back to the router. So this is a modem where we get this internet connection connected to it. This is the termination point here. And from here, we got one more WAN port that goes to the router. And from this router, you got one more switch actually, but here in this case, we got a switch and router combined together and all the users are connected. So exactly like this, we get an internet service provider connection that goes to the router. The bottom one, you see this is a router. And this is a cable running between the switch and the router, the downlink connection. And from the router, one more connection that goes to the ISP, the same thing like here. One connection, WAN port goes to the one connection that goes to the router, and the other connection here it goes to the switch. Here it's combined together. And these are all the user ports. These are all the user ports. These are all the user ports. This is a connection back to back between a switch and router. This is a switch. And we got one internet connection, right? WAN connection that runs between the router and the service provider. This is how the enterprise design looks like. This is a pretty simple design. We got one router and one switch, and the users are connected to the switches. So now let's look into the router memory. What are all the components the router has and how it exactly works, right? Let me open up that. For every device, it should have it. Since this is a hardware, for every device, we should have an operating system running, right? So in the same way, Cisco, they are using an operating system named as iOS. That's running inside this box. And this is purely a CLI based. The router I'm talking about now, we got the wireless controllers and all that you can access the devices through HTTP, and this router still supports the remote connection through HTTP and HTTPS. So let me walk you through the modes. The very first thing when we log in this device, right? As we log into the Windows PC, when you log into this device, what you can do. The very first command is user execution mode, that you can run only your show commands. So it's very basic. I mean, if you want to check, these are all the ports, right? So in Cisco terminology, they say these are all ports as well as interfaces. To check the status, we usually, very first time when you log in the device, I always suggest you to give this command, show IP interface brief. Just give the overview of the interfaces. Is it up? The interface is up and running, or the interface is down, and all that. I'll show you the practical live commands, but just for the basic understanding, I'm showing you this. So within the execution mode, you cannot make any changes. No changes can be done you cannot make any changes in the execution mode. No changes can be done. Only show commands. Something used for monitoring. Only you can monitor. You cannot make any changes to the devices. In the execution mode, you got additional commands. Apart from you got some limitation with this execution mode. Whereas in the privilege mode, it's still, you cannot make any changes in the privilege mode, but you got more commands that you can run, more show commands. That is not available in the execution mode. So next is the configuration mode. Here you can actually make the changes. you start doing this changes, and they say this is a global configuration mode. Why this is called as global configuration mode? Because this is where the configuration starts. And if you want to go a specific interface level, say for example, now we can see I want to make changes to this specific configuration. Here it is fast Ethernet 0/1, right? So I have to go inside the interface. First, I have to go to config and then interface, followed by the interface ID. So every interface has its own identification number, right? So that's how we can differentiate. So here, this is fast Ethernet 0/1. So if I want to make any changes to this specific interface, I have to get inside this interface and make changes accordingly. And this particular mode, this is used for all this remote logging configuration, because you cannot sit in front of your router forever, right? I mean, you want to manage these devices through remote configuration. You have to manage the devices through remote. So all this remote configuration will be done inside this line VTY. This is called as virtual terminal. We call it as virtual terminal connection. So in the lab, we'll do all the configuration for this. But for now, this is the types of modes in the router. And if you want to make changes to a specific interface level, you have to go inside the interface configuration. And if you want to make any changes, if you want to enable the devices for remote access, you have to get into the VTY connection and you have to make it configuration accordingly. We'll see in the lab. And also I'll show you the internal components of routers now. So inside the router, the box which we are discussing about, inside the router, we got three primary components we'll be focusing more, and we should know about that. First, it's called as RAM. This specific RAM is same like a volatile memory. All the data, whatever information you have inside the RAM, that's not permanent. That's going to wipe out just a temporary memory. Same kind of like Windows PC. The same functionality it does in the Cisco device. Same thing, RAM. But in addition, it got an additional component that's called as NVRAM. This is non-volatile RAM. Whatever the information you save, that's going to stay forever until you erase the config. Whereas in the RAM, in case of any power failure, and if you are not saving your configuration, your RAM information will not be saved. And this is a component called as a flash. Inside this, you got your iOS, the operating system. If your flash is crashed, then your router will not be up and running. Your router will not run. So now we'll see what is inside RAM, or what are all the information we save inside the RAM, NVRAM, and as I told you, inside the flash we got an operating system. In the lab we can see exactly what is inside flash, what is inside RAM, NVRAM, and all that. But here, all your running configuration will be saved. All your running configuration will be saved inside RAM. And all your startup config will be saved in the NVRAM. This is forever. Say, for example, you are making some changes to your current configuration. When you log in your device, that would be running with your running configuration. Whenever you log in a device, right, you will be doing all your changes in the running config. That's your RAM. So once you do these changes, you have to save. So you have to give a command, write command. So when you give write command, what happens? All your configuration will be saved from running config to startup config. This is the command. Copy running to startup, or else you can give a write command also, a shortcut command. So both does the same job. All your running configuration will be saved into your startup config. So this is the high-level overview of the components inside the router and what is running config, what is startup config, what is flash, what is RAM, and what is NVRAM. This is the main component we should know for CCNA, and also this is a fundamental for Cisco router. You should know all this. What is iOS? What is running config? What is startup config? What is inside flash? What is iOS? So now the router which we are accessing now so far from the packet tracer perspective, it is just logging the device directly. But whereas in the real time, it's not. We cannot go sit in front of the router forever. For every device, you have to, hop around with your console cable and you have to make connections. That's not possible. But when you spin up your device, if it is a brand new device and you have to make a config, since no configuration be saved inside, you have to have a console cable that's connected to your laptop. So what is this? This is a RS-232 port. They said it is a COM port, like a female connector, and you have to connect this back. And the other end should be connected to the router's console port, a dedicated port for console access. For the very first time, you have to connect this, and you should have any kind of terminal application. To log in the device, you have to see what's the output, right? So that you should definitely have an application which actually show you all the outputs. So people, they mostly use a freeware called PuTTY, SecureCRT. This is a paid, and most of them, they use PuTTY. It's a free. SecureCRT is a paid, and you can access all this. I will show you that, how the SecureCRT and PuTTY looks like and how to access this device. And one more thing, to access a device, a router, you can access through, first you can access through console connection. That's a direct connection to your router. Other connection, it's an SSH. This is a remote connection. You have to do a pre-configuration inside the router or switch. This is common for both router and switch. You have to, run this SSH, and a secure connection will be established from your PC all the way back to your internet connection and all the way back to the devices, the router or switches, whatever it is, the devices you are trying to access. And this SSH should be enabled in the specific box. It's a router on switches, whatever you use. and you should have a reachability to this device. Being you are connected to the internet, you should have some sort of connection. So basically, how we work, people working from home, they use VPN connection. So once they are connected, they will have a connection back to the corporate network, and they start accessing their device. If you're inside the local LAN, if say for example you're sitting inside your office and the router is connected to your switch, that's a local router, and you're connected to the switch with your PC. All you have to do is open up your application, terminal application PuTTY or secure CRT. You have to open this application and log in this device. I'll show you all that, how we'll do that, and we'll do that in the lab. But for now, this is a basic understanding of accessing the devices. And one more thing that is not deprecated, but people, they don't prefer much. This is Telnet. That's plain text. When you capture this Telnet session, you can see the username and password. So in the enterprise, mostly they won't use Telnet. They always prefer SSH because the packets are encrypted, and so anyone man in the middle attack, if they try to do, all the informations are encrypted and they are never going to see what's inside. But in the Telnet, you can see that. In the next class, I'll show you the packet capture with Telnet, and we will try to see the username and password into it in the GNS2. So these are all the ways we have to access the devices. One through console connection, and another through SSH and Telnet. SSH and Telnet both are remote connection, and console connection is a direct connection to the router. And you should have a console port connected to it. As I shown you like this, you should have a console connection connected to the router to do that. So now I'll show you how you can do a console connection to a router and do the configurations. Let me take you to the lab. So let me start a new lab. So here, let me open a router now. So this is the port, console port. The packet tracer, it's not bigger, but actually in the real routers and switches, the port is a little bit bigger. It's RJ45 port. There you can connect your console connection. One end is connected to your router, and other end goes to the PC. So let me take a PC here. And the cable that should be used is a console cable. Have to connect into your RS-232 port and connect to the console port of your router. So inside your PC, to open config, desktop, and then open a terminal. And this is default values. We always, when you open your terminal for your console connection, this is a default values you should have. For every vendor, it differs, but for Cisco devices, mostly they use the same values. The data bits should be 8, and the 9600 is a bits per second values that should be specified here. Can you see this? I am in my terminal, I'm in my PC and accessing this router. So as I told you, this is execution mode. All you can do is just a show command, nothing else. So here you can see all kind of information. What is ARP? Yeah, we'll discuss in detail about that in the upcoming classes, but these are all the commands. Only these commands can be executed from this terminal, this mode, sorry. You cannot access any other configuration. You cannot do any other configuration apart from what you see here. You can check, do a basic check like show IP interface brief. I mean, what is the brief information about the interfaces? So what is up, what is down? So if you see, all these interfaces are admin down now. Manually, it's down. That's the status it's showing up here. And the next mode, you have to always give this command to get into the privilege mode. Enable command. So if I give show command now, can you see that you got only 20 plus commands you can run in the execution mode, whereas in the privilege mode you got about 30-40 commands, the additional commands you can run. As I told you in the topology explanation, this is just again a show commands. You cannot do any configuration in the privilege mode. This is called a privilege mode. This is privilege mode. You can see this. See, this hash indicates a privilege mode. And the greater than symbol, it says it's in execution mode. And you have to give an enable command. Only then you can get into the privilege mode. And you cannot do any changes. So to make any changes, I have to give configure terminal, the complete command. So now it's inside the global config mode. So here starts your global configuration. All your configurations like interface configuration and your, as we discussed, your virtual terminal connection. You can do all sort of configuration from this configuration mode. It goes like a tree structure. So if you go into interface mode, you can do all the configurations whatever you needed. So let me give show IP interface brief to see there's the active interfaces, all this all gigabyte Ethernet ports. So let me log in this device, log in to the interface, and here I can do changes. So here, like as I told you, this is the tree. So you'll get all your sub commands here. The possible configuration that is inside the interface mode. Can you see that? Say the mode changed from global config mode to interface mode. IF stands for interface. From global mode to it changed to interface mode. And you can do your configuration. You can start doing your configuration from here. In the in the real world, you cannot just by connecting your device to a console cable, that's never going to work. So you have to give a command line console followed by the ID. That's generally you got only one console port, right? So this is 0. 0 indicates the number of connections you can have. Line console 0. And when you plug in your device, it looks like this, right? This is your router now, and you got a console port, and this console port goes to your PC, and in your PC you got your RS-232 port, and this is console port that's connected to your router. So I'm in this PC. So inside the PC, I'm running an application that is PuTTY or Secure CRT. There are more, but people, they mostly use the PuTTY and Secure CRT familiar, and there are, you got many terminal applications you can use. So from this PuTTY application, you can access your router. That's how exactly we are doing here. Here we got the terminal by default inside this, right? Inside this PC, and inside the desktop, I went to the terminal and I got the output here. From here, I'm doing. So in the real world, as I told you, if you want to make a connection like this, you have to specify your console connection. And you should define your password. Something like here, an example I'm giving a Cisco. So only with this, once you log into this device, you have to give this password in the line console connection. Only then you can log into the device. So this is how you can access your device through console connection, through terminal. So next thing, we will look at what is auxiliary port. Let me go to the router here. Let me zoom in. This is the aux port here. This is aux port. What generally happens, this aux port is used for, remote connection. You got your modem. They generally have this analog modem. For example, you're an office, and your office is in, example, your office is in Chennai. I mean, the branch office is in Chennai, and you got one more branch office that's in Bangalore. And you got this, both the devices are connected to internet. Yeah, the router's got a connection to the internet. And if something happens to this device, it lost the internet connection here. How do we access this device? We have a separate, this analog connection, analog modem. Sorry that this time I didn't, save the pictures. Next time I'll show you how this analog modem connection will be with the router, how the connection will be, and how they are accessing. At least, pictorial representation I'll give you next time. But for now, this is how the connection is. You got a separate analog connection, something like your phone connection. That's connected to your modem. That's analog modem. So what happens? You can access from your PuTTY session. You can access this modem. I'll show you in detail about that, but to give an understanding, if the internet connection is down, you can still log in your device through this modem, through this analog modem from anywhere. If you have a pre-configuration that's been done, that's the ideology, is you are getting connected to through this backup connection, analog connection, just to log in this device. And we can see, right, without anyone at site, you can see what exactly happened. Is it the internet link is down, or the LAN interface is down? You get more details about that. Even though nobody is available at site, you can still have insight of what's exactly happening inside the router. That's the use of aux port and aux connection is. The enterprise where I work, we always have this connection back, and this is no more now, but it is very useful. Without the SPOC, we get to know what exactly happened in a device. Is the device is physically down, or do we really, there is a problem with the ISP connection. The first thing we do is we do a dial-up from an application. to a specific number for every site, right? Here I said it's a Chennai and Bangalore. For every site, it's been assigned with something like your phone number, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Example, I'm saying 7, 8, 9, 6, 7. You can call from your analog phone and you can check a connection. So this way we'll find out, is it really a power issue? Even if it is a power issue, this modem that's connected to the aux port at site, right, in Bangalore, if this modem is not powered up, then it's a problem with the power. We'll conclude that. But if still we can have reachability, we can dial this number, we get a dial tone, then we will log into this device and see exactly what happened. Most of the time it would be an ISP connection issue or power issue. But you can do this both checks without any human intervention. That helps a lot of time, and you get an insight what exactly happening in a site. That's the use of aux port. So let me check the course content. So now we will do a Telnet configuration. So Telnet is terminal network. As I told you, Telnet is a terminal connection. You can specify your connection from 0 to 5 and then 15 to 20, I believe. I'll log into the device and see exactly what the count is, but you can define the number of connection the router can have. So the ideology is you have your PC, as I told you, you're working from remote and you have your router somewhere in Bangalore and you want to access this device. You got an internet connection in the middle. And if you enable Telnet inside this box, if this PC have a reachability to this device, you can access this box from this PC. Let's see how the configuration can be done inside. So I am inside the router and I am inside the global configuration mode. And I am going inside the line VTY connection, line VTY 0 to 4. Sorry, line VTY 0 to 15 you can give. And here I am giving 0 to 5. 5 connection that's allowed inside. And then now I have to give a password, right, to log in the device. So let me give a password, something like Cisco. So, but to access this device, definitely we should have an IP address, right? We will have a separate session where we will discuss about the IP assignment, what is private IP address, what is public IP address in the upcoming classes. As per the course content, we'll go through with the IP addressing. But to give a basic understanding, you definitely should have a IP address for this device. Only then it can be discovered from anywhere, right? That's something like an identity for this device. So without IP address, I cannot do anything. I cannot reach this device. So I'm configuring an IP address here. So now I'm giving the interface name. This is an interface. We call it interface ports. So I'm giving interface GI0/0. And I'm giving an IP address in the 10 network range. Example 10.0.0.1. The subnet mask is 255.0.0.0. And I have to give always no shutdown command. Once we do that, the interface state change to up. IP interface brief. So now I will have an additional router here to access this device from the ideology is to log in the device through remote, right? So I got one more router here, and I am connecting one more cable to this, logging into this device. You have to skip all this initial configuration, because since we are manually, you know what to configure. This default will take you with all your basic configuration, like assign an IP address and all that. It's always better to skip that and do your own configuration. I gave the enable command. I went from the execution mode to privilege mode, and I'm giving configuration terminal because I want to do a config here. So now, so now I'm going inside this interface. See, this is the active interface I'm connected to. So I'm giving this command interface. Inside the interface, I'm going inside the interface gigabyte 0/0, and I'm assigning an IP address, doing like in the same network to have a direct connection. 10.0.0.2, and the subnet mask is 255.0.0.0, and I'm giving no shutdown command. And just for differentiation, I'm giving this as a host name remote. So this is the command. You can change your host name inside the config mode. You have to be inside the config mode. You have to inside the config mode, and just a simple command, host name followed by the host name, whatever it's a predefined name. Whatever host name you give, the host name will be assigned to the router. Just assign an IP address, and now I have to check, do I have a reachability to this device? So here I will give you a basic understanding about what is ARP, that's address resolution protocol. That we always use this command to check the directly connected devices. But the additional information you get from ARP is you get both layer 2 and layer 3 address. So when I say layer 2 and layer 3, all the upcoming classes, layer 2 is the MAC address and layer 3 is the IP address. So you get both details, layer 2 and layer 3 address. So I have to give this command, show IP interface brief. Always give this command so we can check, is it the status is up, the protocol is up. The both states should be up, only then you get a connection. Both states should be always up. Because both sides I am using same protocols, IP protocol. What is that? Because in the one end, I have assigned the, here it's an interface example and other interface in the router. So I am running the same protocol, that is IP protocol. That's the reason the protocol is up. It should match. And this is a physical status. Both should be always up, only then you have a connection back. So let me check if I can ping the router from here. I cannot ping the router now. Yeah, because it's sending an ICMP echo messages, right? So this is first, it's just a probe information from this remote device. So we use this command, right? Ping, to test the connection. So from this remote PC, I'm sending an ICMP echo request. For that, I'm receiving ICMP echo response. So only if this is successful, we come to know, okay, I got a connection. for the destination. So I can reach the device. So I'll jump into the router where I have configured the Telnet connection. So from here, I have to give a command telnet 10.0.0.1. So it's asking for a password. So the password I configured is Cisco. You see this now. Two things. First, I got a connection. I got a Telnet connection because I'm trying to open a Telnet connection and it's open and I can log in the device. But the basic criteria for the Telnet connection is you have to have, your Telnet connection should have a password. And for your enable to log into the enable mode, from the enable mode, if you're going to the privilege mode, you should have a password that's in the middle. So 2 passwords. Only then you can access the device. But for now, this proves my Telnet connection. I got a Telnet connection. How do I verify that? I have to go inside the router, show user. If I give show user command, see, this is my IP address, which I logged in from. And it established a connection on virtual port 4. I mean, 4th connection, and this is my source, the PC where I am logging in from. So you can check all your active Telnet connections using this command, show users. So I logged in the device now from here. Since I didn't enable the password, I cannot log in beyond the execution mode. So what I have to give, I have to give command enable password, and I'm giving the same command Cisco. As I told you here, in addition, I'll show you. See, this is my show running configuration inside my RAM. This is called as running config. If I am not saving the configuration, whatever the Telnet configuration, whatever I do, everything will be wiped out. You have to do from the scratch, the IP config and all that. I have to save this config. Now my configuration, now all this configuration is running inside the running configuration, and I have to copy this config to startup. From saving from my RAM to my NVRAM. Inside my NVRAM, I got all my startup config. When you power on your router, all your configuration will be booted from this NVRAM, the first boot up device. When you turn off and turn on your device, in your boot up, it looks the configuration from your startup config. So for example, if you did a telnet and if you forget to give save running to startup config, then all your configuration will be erased and you cannot log in this device from the remote if somebody wants to do. So you should always remember to save your config whenever you do the changes, especially for remote connections. Once you lost a connection, you have to get a console connection, and then only then you can configure all your telnet configuration to make the device accessible through remote. So both command write memory. This will save my configuration from running to startup. See, show startup config. Whatever the configuration I did, the running configuration has been saved. I should give show running config. This is the config inside my RAM. So both are same because I saved the config. Let's test this. Let me give the host name as R1. I didn't save my config. show startup config. The hostname is still router, right? But here I changed the hostname as R1 because I didn't save. Now let me try to save the config. I'll give write command. So now show startup config, and the hostname is changed to R1 from router. Earlier it was router, and now it's changed as R1. So this is how your configuration will be saved from RAM to NVRAM. So now I change the configuration. Let's see, now I can access this device from remote. I give enable, and it's asking for the enable password, but earlier before it said that I didn't set the enable password. So no password has been set. Now we have configured the enable password. I can log in the router. And if I give a command show IP interface brief, so this proves my connection that I have a Telnet connection back to this router. So now SSH. First, what is SSH? SSH, as I told you, is encrypted connection, secure connection. Telnet is a plain text. So nobody prefer this. Always people use SSH. Let's jump in and see how we can do a SSH config inside the router. I'll tell you, for SSH configuration, you got 3 steps you should follow. First thing, you have to enable SSH. Then you have to create a key, crypto key for encryption. And the third thing, you have to give right config. The configuration will be saved. To enable SSH, and you have to create a crypto key, and you have to save the config. And SSH has, it got 2 flavors. One is SSH v1 and SSH v2, version 1 and version 2. So we are always using SSH version 2. The advanced and the encrypted, it supports advanced encryption, whereas SSH version 1 will not support advanced encryption. So let's see how we can do the config inside the router. So first, I'm in the privilege mode. I can just give show command. So I have to go inside the configuration mode, and I have to give a command IP SSH, and you can define your version. See, you can see version 1 and 2, and I'm giving version 2 here. It says I have to enable a RSA key with minimum 768-bit size to enable SSH v2. So what is the next command? I have to give a command crypto key generate RSA. Just press enter. So I have to define a domain. Sorry, I missed that. You have to define your domain name. Basic criteria along with SSH. 4 things to enable SSH, and you have to define the version. You have to create a crypto key, and you have to define your domain name. For testing, I'm just giving IP domain name Any name you can give, just I'm giving SSH core. So SSH v2, then I'm giving crypto key generate RSA, and it's asking for the module size, right? So if I want to enable SSH version 2, it should be more than 768 bytes. So here I'll define something, the complete value, most recommended 2048. So it's created. So how do I check SSH is enabled? Show IP SSH. You see that my SSH is enabled and the version I'm using is 2. The maximum authentication retries is 3 times. And the authentication timeout is 120 seconds. If it is beyond 120 seconds, it's trying to make a connection and it's going beyond 120 seconds, then I cannot make a connection back. So I got my SSH enabled. So how do I define inside that router? So now I'm going to config mode because I have configured SSH. First, I have defined, I have configured the domain name. I've defined the SSH version. I have created the crypto key and I have checked, giving command show IP SSH, and it says that I have enabled SSH version 2. Now I want to do the changes in the terminal. Line VTY 024. The command is transport input SSH. If I give only this command, my SSH connection only works and my Telnet connection will not work. So I'm using Telnet and SSH. So I am importing both SSH and Telnet. So what is the command? Transport input all will enable both SSH and terminal connect. SSH and Telnet connection, sorry. Both are done. I'm going to save the config, giving right memory. Save my config. How do I check that? Show running. Because whenever I log in the device, it will be always in the running config. I think this has some limitations that it's not showing up here. IP SSH. It's enabled, right? Show running section. Okay. I think due to some limitation, it's not showing, but actually inside this, it will show the command transport input all in the real devices. So SSH is enabled. Let me try to log in the device from remote through SSH. So this is a command you can log in, SSH followed by hyphen and this the login username. What is the username we are using? Since I haven't created the username and password, I cannot log in, right? So I have to create a local username and password that's local to this device. There's two kind of password you can have for your device. So this is a router. So inside the config, you create your username and password. This is local username and password. That's saved inside the box. And another one is an external authentication server. The upcoming classes will have more understanding about what is Radius server, what is TACAC server. So external authentication servers. So TACAC is Cisco and Radius, this is Windows based. So for now, just we got two kind of authentication. One is local authentication and one is an external authentication. Now I am using only the local authentication. So I am inside this router where I want to give a remote connection to. So I'm going to configuration terminal, Here I can do a configuration mode, and I'm creating my local username and password. Username is Cisco and password is Cisco. So I did that. So I have to, so you no need to exit from your configuration mode to save the configuration every time. You can give do write command. Do inside whatever command you want to run, you can use do command and followed by the actual command will do the changes. So for example, if I want to check the interface status, I can give do show IP interface brief. You don't need to exit from your config mode when you are doing some changes. So I did that. I saved the config. I have enabled the username and password now. Yeah, username is Cisco and password is Cisco. And I'm going inside this router. And let me try to log in. So the username I gave there is Cisco, right? And the version we have to define here, version 2, and then IP address which I'm trying to log in, 10.0.0.1. It's asking for the password. And I'm inside the router. And it's again asking for the enable password, and I gave the password. I am inside the SSH connection. I'm inside this router. But actually, I am sitting in the, this router 1941, but I logged in this ISR 4331 router from here through Telnet. So this is the command that's used. SSH secure connection login followed by the username, the local username, and the version I have to define, and the IP address, active IP address. Here I have configured the active IP as 10.0.0.1. 10.0.0.1. So I got a SSH connection back to this device. I'm preparing a lab in the GNS. So in the next class, I'll show you, how to access the device through HTTP and HTTPS. The commands, it's limited to packet tracer, since I cannot give this command in the packet tracer. So we'll have in the next class, I'll definitely show you the configuration, the GNS. That's pretty simple. The command is IP HTTP server enable, but there is the specific command due to packet tracer limitation. We do not have this command. We have to, inside the global config, have to give IP HTTP server and then IP HTTP secure server. So this enables my HTTP connection. So from your from the browser, from the PC here, from the browser, I'll open my web browser and I'll type HTTP followed by the IP address of the router, and I'll get a GUI interface of the switch, and whatever the changes you want, we'll do it. This is just an again high level overview. I'll show you in the next class how this HTTP can be done from a PC browser. So for now, I think we have covered all the concepts today except the HTTP and HTTPS. As I told you, I have some limitations with this packet reason, so I cannot show you today, but in the next class, I'll definitely show you. We discussed about this, right? Router and switch using console connection. I've shown you a router. The switch is also same. No big difference. The switch is also got a same kind of console port where you can connect the switch through console connection. I think the packet tracer, okay. Here we got a console port, right? Console connection. The same way, no big difference. All the commands, same similar iOS commands. Let me show you this. Let me connect the console port to this PC. Terminal, the default value 9600 bits per second and 8 bits is predefined. OK. And I can see the switch locked in. No big changes, same command. I'm in the execution mode. I'm in the privilege mode now. I'm inside the config mode. And I'm giving a command line vty, sorry, line console 0. And you can define your password. Same command like router, no big changes. Same iOS. iOS is different, but the commands are same. To write. Whenever you log in the device, like your mobile phone, you have the operating system. You can see right Android or iOS. The same way you have to give a command show version from your privilege mode. You can see the what is the iOS version it's running. Two ways you can see here, and also from the flash, you can see what is inside. As we discussed, what is inside flash, I didn't show you that. So if you give dir, see this is directory of flash, and I got this operating system inside, and whatever the configuration I do, that's saved inside the config text. So if I delete this, all your configuration will be erased. You cannot log in this device. If you have your password protected, all your configuration will be erased and you have to do from the scratch. So inside the flash, you got your iOS. As we told, inside the flash, we got iOS, and inside RAM, you got your startup config. Sorry, inside RAM, you got your running config. And inside NVRAM, you got your startup config. That's it. I hope everybody enjoyed the class today, and we have Q&A session on Wednesday, so you can ask your queries on Wednesday. And I would recommend you to go through this and do a lab. Only by doing the labs you can get familiar with the commands, and you'll understand where exactly the configuration is saved. And I would also, I'll try to share the documents with all this commands, whatever the commands I use to do a config and all that. I'll prepare a template and share you in the next class. And hopefully you'll join by today. Sorry, we'll join tomorrow. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, everybody, guys. We'll meet tomorrow. Have a great day. Bye.